Hello, my name is Jacob. I'm 33 years old, an age people say is mature enough to understand life. But for me, each passing day feels like a hammer striking at the remnants of my long-worn pride. I'm a mechanic, living in a small town nestled between golden wheat fields and dusty red dirt roads that kick up clouds whenever the wind blows through. This town, with its weathered wooden houses and sparsely populated streets, is my entire world. Yet that world has never truly belonged to me. Every morning I wake up in a cramped room at the back of the house where the smell of engine oil and sweat permeates every floorboard. This house, if you can call it that for the sake of dignity, is little more than a patchwork of wood with a tin roof that clatters in the rain. I live with my father, mother, and younger brother Daniel. But if you ask me about family, I'd only give a faint smile because the word family means nothing to me beyond scars that never heal. My father, Henry, is a harsh man with a face as cold as stone. 20 years ago, he was a manager at a lumber mill, but now he lingers around the house living off welfare checks and the few bucks I bring home. To him, I'm nothing more than a faint shadow, only good for running errands or taking his outbursts. The lowly mechanic, he calls me, his voice dripping with contempt, as if I'm a stain on his lineage. I've never understood why he hates me so much. When I was a kid, I once asked my mother, "Does Dad love me?" She just patted my head, her eyes brimming with tears, and changed the subject. I learned to stop asking after that. Daniel, my brother, 7 years my junior, is my father's pride and joy. He went to college and works in a bright office in a city about 30 miles from town. To Dad, Daniel is everything, proof that he did something right in life. Whenever Daniel visits, Dad will sit for hours listening to him talk about contracts and business trips, his voice full of pride. In those moments, I keep my head down, staring at my plate of cold rice or slipping out to the backyard where the sound of the wind drowns out their laughter. Daniel never saw me as his brother. To him, I'm just the mechanic, a label he picked up from Dad, and every time he says it, I feel my heart constrict. My mother, Ellen, is the only source of warmth in this house. She's gentle with a soft voice, but always seems to carry a deep, hidden sorrow. She sometimes watches me work, her eyes filled with love but also helplessness. Once, when Dad berated me for dropping a wrench during dinner, Mom grabbed my hand under the table and squeezed it lightly, as if to say, "I'm here." But she never dared speak up for me in front of him. I don't blame her. I know she's suffering too, trapped in the same invisible cage of this family, just like me. My job at the garage isn't something to brag about. I fix cars, weld frames, patch tires, my hands always black with grease. The shop sits at the end of the main street, a rundown shed with a rusty tin roof and a few old tools. The boss, Sam, is a decent guy, but he never pays me enough to dream of a different life. Every day I hunch over old trucks, listening to the same radio songs I've heard 100 times, trying not to think about Dad's disdainful looks or Daniel's mocking words. But some days when I'm alone in the shop amidst the clanging of metal, I wonder, what am I living for? Just to be called a lowly mechanic? This town is small, so small that everyone knows everyone's business. People look at me with pity or worse, indifference. "Jacob, Henry's son, just a mechanic," they whisper behind my back as I pass the grocery store or the church. I've learned to ignore it, but each word cuts into my pride like a knife. Once, a neighbor, Martha, asked me bluntly in front of others, "Jacob, why don't you study like Daniel? You gonna be a mechanic forever?" I just smiled, mumbled something, and walked away, but inside I was burning. I wanted to scream, to tell them I have dreams too, that I want to be seen, but I knew no one would care. My life drags on like this, day after day, in an endless loop with no escape. I work, come home, endure Dad's scolding and Daniel's taunts, then retreat to my small room where I can pretend the outside world doesn't exist. But deep down, there's always an emptiness. A wordless question. Where do I really belong? I don't know the answer, but there's something in my mother's eyes and the secret hand squeezes she gives me that feels like she's trying to tell me something, a secret perhaps. Then one day everything began to change, as if fate decided to yank the rope that had been strangling my life. That morning the sky was heavy, blanketed with gray clouds that seemed ready to crush the little town. I was at the garage, hunched over an old engine, my hands smeared with grease. The radio in the corner crackled with a familiar country song, but today it only made me restless. Something felt off, though I couldn't name it. My hands slowed, the wrench suddenly heavy in my grip as if it carried an ominous weight. Then the phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I wiped my hands on my grimy tank top, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. The voice on the other end trembled as if they dreaded what they had to say. "Jacob? Your mother Ellen has been admitted to the hospital. Her condition? It's not good. You should come right away." I froze, the wrench slipping from my hand and clattering onto the concrete floor, the sound echoing like a warning. My mind reeled, flooded with images of Mom. Her kind eyes, her faint smile, the secret hand squeezes she gave me during Dad's tirades. Without thinking, I bolted from the shop, still in my oil-stained clothes, and jumped on my beat-up motorcycle, its engine roaring as if tearing through the silence. The road from the garage to the hospital was only a few miles, but that day it felt endless. The cold wind whipped my face, carrying the smell of red dirt and dry grass, but I felt nothing except the fear gripping my chest. What was waiting for me at the hospital? What was wrong with Mom? Why didn't anyone tell me sooner? The questions swirled in my head, unanswered, accompanied only by the pounding of my heart and the image of Mom, the one person who truly loved me, lying somewhere frail and vulnerable. The town hospital was tiny and old, with yellowing white walls and the sharp smell of antiseptic stinging my nose. I practically ran down the hallway, my oil-stained boots leaving smudges on the floor. A nurse directed me to a room at the end of the corridor, her voice gentle but laced with pity, as if she knew something I wasn't ready to face. I pushed open the door and my heart stopped. There was Mom, lying on a narrow hospital bed, her face pale as paper. Her eyes were closed, her lashes trembling, and strands of gray hair fell across her forehead. An IV dripped slowly into her arm, each drop like a countdown. "Where's the doctor?" I whispered, my voice breaking as a nurse came in to check the machines. She looked at me, her eyes kind but heavy with gravity. "He'll be here soon," she said, then left, leaving me in the cold room with only the steady beep of the heart monitor. The doctor arrived, a middle-aged man with thin-rimmed glasses and a monotone voice, as if he'd said these words countless times. "Your mother has kidney failure," he explained, staring at his clipboard instead of me. "She's known about it for a while but didn't want you to worry. She needs regular dialysis, but now the disease has progressed significantly. You should prepare yourself." Prepare myself? The words echoed in my head, cold and cruel. I'd heard them before, seen scenes like this in countless TV dramas, and now I was the main character in one. I looked at Mom, still motionless on the bed, and a wave of pain surged through my chest. Why didn't she tell me? Why did she hide it, letting me slave away in the garage, oblivious to her silent battle? I sat there all day, holding her hand, counting her faint breaths. Dad didn't come. No surprise, he never cared for her the way he did for Daniel. And Daniel, the family's pride, was busy with meetings in the city, probably sitting in a bright office in a sharp suit, unaware that Mom was lying here, teetering on the edge of life and death. It was just me in this stifling room with Mom and the fear gnawing at every second. As the sun set, a faint orange light crept through the window, bathing Mom's face. She stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. Her eyes, clouded by illness, still lit up when they met mine. She smiled, a weak, loving smile, as if to say she was still here, still my mother. "Jacob." Her voice was a fragile whisper, like a dry leaf about to fall. I leaned close, so close I could feel her faint breath on my cheek. "I have something to tell you," she continued, her voice trembling, each word costing her precious energy. "Something I've kept hidden for too long." I gripped her hand tightly, my heart pounding as if it might burst. In her eyes, I saw a profound pain, a secret buried for decades now seeping out like an old wound reopened. "What is it, Mom?" I asked, my voice trembling, both desperate and terrified of the answer. Mom didn't respond immediately. Her eyes, glistening with unshed tears, locked onto mine as if she were gathering every ounce of strength to reveal something she'd buried for the entirety of my 33 years. She took a long, frail breath and whispered, "Jacob, you're not your father's son." I thought I'd misheard. My heart seemed to stop, my mind going blank. "What did you say?" I asked again, my voice faltering, as if repeating the question might make her say it was just a joke. But her eyes weren't joking. They were deep, pained, and filled with regret. She squeezed my hand lightly, her bony fingers trembling, and continued, "Henry, he's not your real father. I hid it from you, from everyone, because I didn't want you to grow up in pain. But now I can't take this secret with me any longer." I sat there, stunned, as if the ground had collapsed beneath me. Everything I'd ever known, everything I'd believed, suddenly felt alien. Henry, the man I called Dad, the man who'd treated me like a thorn in his side all these years, wasn't my father. I wanted to scream, to ask why, but my throat closed up, tears threatening to spill. I looked at Mom, waiting, hoping she'd say more, something to fill the growing void in my chest. She took another breath, her voice weaker but her eyes resolute, as if she'd waited her whole life to speak these words. "Before I met Henry, I worked as a maid for a wealthy family in the city," she began, her voice halting, each word cutting into my heart like a knife. "They were the most powerful family in the area, living in a grand mansion where I was just a poor girl working to survive. There I met the young master of the house, your real father." I felt the blood in my veins turn to ice. My real father? A wealthy young master? Me, Jacob, the grease-stained mechanic, the son of a rich man? I shook my head, trying to piece together the chaos in my mind, but Mom didn't stop. Her voice trembled but carried a depth of emotion, as if she were reliving those days. "His name was William Carver," she said, a faint spark lighting up her eyes as if the name still held a trace of happy memories. "He was young, handsome, and kind, unlike any other rich person I'd met. We fell in love, Jacob, a love I knew was impossible, but I couldn't resist. I was just a maid and he was the young master. We kept it secret, meeting in hidden corners of the garden under the oak trees at night. But then I became pregnant with you." She paused, breathing heavily. I saw tears welling in her eyes, and I knew this story didn't have a happy ending. I held her hand tighter, as if to lend her strength, though I was the one trembling. "What happened then?" I whispered, my voice hoarse. Mom gave a sad smile. "His family found out. The master and mistress, William's parents, they wouldn't stand for it. A maid pregnant with the young master's child? It was a scandal, a disgrace to them. They kicked me out, Jacob. They gave me some money, told me to leave the city and never come back. I had no choice. I was young, alone, and carrying you. William, he wanted to keep me, but he wasn't strong enough to stand up to his family. I left, carrying you in a pain that never faded." I sat there, numb, trying to process her words. I felt like I was falling into an abyss where everything I knew about myself disintegrated. Mom continued, her voice growing fainter but still pressing on. "I came to this town and met Henry. He agreed to marry me even knowing I was pregnant. I thought he'd love you, but I was wrong. Henry never accepted you as his own. I'm sorry, Jacob. I'm sorry for letting you grow up under his contempt, under the scorn of this whole town." Tears streamed down my face, unstoppable. I didn't blame her. I couldn't. But the pain was overwhelming, the pain of years spent belittled by Henry, mocked by Daniel, and pitied by the town. All because of a secret Mom had carried, a secret that had imprisoned us both. She gasped for breath, as if telling this story had drained the last of her strength. With a trembling hand, she pointed to an old cloth bag on the table beside her bed. "In there's an envelope," she whispered. "I've kept it all these years. It has papers proving you're William Carver's son and his address. I don't know where he is now, but you deserve to know the truth, Jacob. You deserve to live as your true self." I stood, my legs weak. The old cloth bag sat there, small and unassuming, but to me it was like a ticking bomb. I opened it and pulled out a yellowed envelope, carefully sealed. Inside was a paternity document, a few handwritten lines from Mom, and an address: Carver Mansion, Oakwood Road, Eldridge City. The name William Carver was written neatly, a reminder that the man, my real father, was still out there somewhere. I turned back to Mom. Her eyes were closed, her breathing steadier, but her face was still etched with pain. I wanted to ask more, to know why she'd kept this secret so long, whether William Carver had ever looked for her, ever thought of me. But I couldn't bring myself to. She was too weak, and I knew every word she'd spoken today was a sacrifice. That night, I didn't leave the hospital. I sat by Mom, clutching the envelope, my mind swirling with unanswered questions. Who was William Carver? Was he really my father? And if so, why had he never come for me? I stared out the window, where darkness blanketed the town, and felt a small flame ignite within me. Not anger, but a yearning to know the truth, to understand who I really was. But with that came fear. If I sought out William Carver, would he accept me? Or would I just be another stain on his life, as I had been to Henry? I gripped the envelope tightly, feeling its weight, and told myself, no matter what happens, I won't let Mom bear this secret alone anymore. The next morning, Mom slipped into a coma. The doctor said she didn't have much time left. I knew the moment she woke to tell me that story was likely the last time she'd have the strength to speak. I held the envelope close, sitting by her side, and waited. Waited for a miracle, or at the very least a chance to tell her I didn't blame her, that I loved her, no matter how painful the truth was. That afternoon, I stopped by a general store and bought a discounted dress shirt. I tucked the envelope into the pocket and decided to head to the city to find my father. My beat-up motorcycle roared as I left the town, heading toward Eldridge City, nearly 100 miles away. The road stretched long, the cold wind whipping against my face, but I felt nothing except my racing heartbeat and the image of Mom lying in her hospital bed. Eldridge appeared before me like another world. Towering buildings, wide streets, and sleek cars zooming past left me overwhelmed. I, a small-town mechanic, felt out of place amidst this opulence. Oakwood Road was in the suburbs, where grand mansions stood behind rows of ancient oak trees. I stopped my bike in front of a large estate with white walls, a red-tiled roof, and an intricately wrought iron gate. A brass plaque by the gate read clearly, Carver. This was it, the place where Mom had worked, where she loved my father, and where I was conceived in secret. I stood before the gate, my hands trembling as I pressed the intercom. A deep voice came through the speaker. "Who's there?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm Jacob, Ellen's son. I'm here to see Mr. William Carver. I have something important to discuss." Silence. A long silence that made me think I'd be turned away. Then the gate creaked open slowly, as if ushering me into a new chapter of my life. A butler, an elderly man with silver hair and a pristine suit, led me through a sprawling garden where meticulously tended flower beds and a bubbling fountain adorned the courtyard. I felt like an outsider, my dirty boots and the faint smell of engine oil clinging to me. We entered a grand living room with soaring ceilings, walls adorned with large paintings, and a fireplace crackling softly. The butler told me to wait and disappeared behind a wooden door. I stood there, clutching the envelope, my mind racing. Would William Carver be like Henry, cold and contemptuous? Or would he be the man Mom once loved, the one who tried to keep her? I didn't know. But when the door opened and a man stepped in, my heart seemed to stop. William Carver was tall, with salt and pepper hair neatly combed and deep green eyes that carried an air of authority. He wore a gray suit, but what struck me was his gaze, both familiar and foreign, as if I were looking at another version of myself. He studied me, his brows furrowing slightly. "You're Jacob?" he asked, his voice deep and cautious. I nodded, my throat dry. I'm Ellen's son, Ellen who used to work here. I paused, unsure how to continue. William Carver froze, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. Ellen? He repeated, his voice trembling slightly. You mean Ellen, who worked here 30 years ago? Summoning all my courage, I handed him the envelope. My mother told me to give this to you. She said, I'm your son. The words left my mouth like a bullet, and I saw William Carver's face pale. He took the envelope, his hands shaking as he opened it. He read the paternity document, then the handwritten note from Mom, his eyes lost in a distant memory. Ellen, he whispered, his voice breaking. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw tears in the eyes of a man revered by this entire city. I looked for her, he said, his voice crumbling. After she was sent away, I tried to find her, but my family, and they stopped me. I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know about you. I didn't know how to respond. I wanted to be angry, to blame him for leaving Mom alone, for letting me grow up in scorn. But looking into his eyes, I saw a man carrying a pain no less than Mom's. She's in the hospital, I said, my voice hoarse. She has kidney failure and she doesn't have much time. I think you should see her. William didn't hesitate. Take me to her, he said firmly. We left the mansion immediately, climbing into a sleek black car I'd never dreamed of riding in. On the way back to town, he asked about Mom, about my life, and I told him bit by bit about the years of being belittled by Henry and Daniel, about the moments Mom secretly held my hand to comfort me. William listened, his hands clenched, his eyes reddening. When we reached the hospital, night had fallen. Mom's room was still cold, the heart monitor beeping steadily but faintly. She lay there, eyes closed, her face as if lost in a dream. I took her hand and whispered, Mom, I found him. William stood beside me, silent, but I saw him tremble as he looked at her. He knelt down, taking her other hand, his voice choked with emotion. Ellen, it's me, William. I'm so sorry. Sorry for everything. Mom stirred, her clouded eyes fluttering open. When she saw William, then looked at me, a faint smile spread across her lips. Jacob. William, she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. I leaned down, embracing her, and William did the same. In that moment, the three of us were a true family. Not the family of Henry and Daniel, but one bound by love and long-buried pain. I cried, William cried, and Mom, though frail, smiled, her eyes shining with a happiness I'd never seen before. Mom passed away that night, in my arms and William's. She closed her eyes, her breathing stopped, but her smile lingered. I knew she was at peace. The secret she'd carried for so long had been set free, and she'd seen me find my father, loved in the way I deserved. William hugged me, his shoulders shaking with sobs. You're my son, Jacob, he said, his voice resolute, and from now on I won't let you be alone. I nodded, tears still falling, but for the first time I felt a spark inside, a spark of hope, of a new life. The next morning I left the hospital with red-rimmed eyes and a heavy heart. William drove me back to town in his sleek black car. On the way he was quiet, but his eyes were resolute. I'll handle some business in the city, he said as he pulled up in front of my weathered wooden house. But I'll be back, Jacob, I promise. I'll be at Ellen's funeral. I nodded, unsure of what to say. My emotions were a tangle of gratitude for his presence and anxiety about facing Henry and Daniel. William placed a hand on my shoulder, a simple gesture that made me feel like someone truly had my back. You're stronger than you think, he said. Then turned the car around, driving off in a cloud of the town's red dust. I stood before the house, taking a deep breath. This place, where I grew up, had never truly been a home. It was just a space filled with scolding words, contemptuous looks, and painful memories. I pushed the door open, the smell of old wood and Henry's cigarette smoke hitting me. Henry was sitting at the kitchen table reading a newspaper as if nothing had happened. Daniel wasn't there, probably still in the city, busy with his contracts and the life he always bragged about. Henry, I called, my voice hoarse. He looked up, his brows furrowing, his eyes as cold as ever. I didn't call him Dad anymore. Not because I knew the truth, but because I realized he'd never deserved the title. "Mom's gone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Last night at the hospital." Henry blinked, but his face didn't change. Not a single tear, not a word of grief. He just nodded as if I'd told him it might rain. "Is that so?" he said flatly. "What are you gonna do?" I clenched my fists, fighting the anger surging within me. "I'll arrange the funeral," I replied. "At the local church, this Saturday." Henry shrugged and returned to his paper as if Mom, the woman who'd lived with him for 30 years, was just a passerby. I turned away, unwilling to stay in that house a moment longer. I knew Henry wouldn't help, and Daniel, if he showed up, would likely only come to save face. I told myself I was doing this for Mom, not for them. The next few days were a blur of preparing for the funeral. I contacted the church, chose a casket, and wrote the eulogy. Each line I wrote for Mom brought tears, but also a promise to make her proud, even if it was for the last time. Saturday arrived, the sky gray as if the whole town were mourning with me. The local church, with its weathered steeple and worn wooden pews, was packed. Neighbors, Mom's friends, and even curious onlookers filled the seats. I stood by Mom's casket, wearing the old suit she'd bought me for my high school graduation, the only one I owned. Seeing her lying there, serene with a faint smile, tore at my heart. I wanted her here, to see me trying, but I knew she was at rest. Henry and Daniel showed up late, as if arriving on time was too much effort. Henry wore a wrinkled shirt while Daniel, as usual, strutted in an expensive suit, his eyes passing over me like I was a stranger. They sat in the front row but didn't approach the casket to see Mom one last time. I clenched my fists, focusing on the eulogy I'd prepared, though my heart was heavy. I knew the worst was yet to come. As the pastor began the service, I stood to deliver the eulogy. My voice trembled, but I forced each word out clearly, speaking of Mom, the gentle, loving woman who sacrificed her life for me. I talked about the times she secretly held my hand, the smiles she gave me, and the secret she carried until the end. I didn't mention William, not because I was hiding it, but because I wanted this moment to be for Mom alone. But then, mid-sentence, Daniel stood, cutting me off. "Enough, Jacob," he said, his voice dripping with contempt, echoing through the church. "Who do you think you are, standing there blabbering? A lowly mechanic who never did anything for Mom, now pretending to grieve for attention?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen as if slapped. Henry, sitting beside him, smirked and added, "He's right. All he's good for is tracking grease through the house. Ellen shouldn't have had to suffer because of him." Blood rushed to my head. Years of enduring their scorn, their belittling, exploded in my chest. I wanted to scream, to lunge at Daniel and wipe that smug look off his face. But before I could speak, a deep, commanding voice rang out from the church entrance. "That's enough." The church fell silent. Every eye turned to the door. William Carver strode in, tall and imposing, dressed in a sharp black suit, his eyes blazing with anger. He walked straight toward me, ignoring the stunned stares of the crowd. Whispers spread, "That's William Carver, the tycoon from Eldridge. Why is he here?" Daniel and Henry sat frozen, their faces pale. William stopped beside me, placing a hand on my shoulder, lending me strength. He looked directly at Henry and Daniel, his voice calm but sharp as steel. "This is my son. Jacob is my son. And I won't allow anyone, not even you, to insult him, especially not today as we bid farewell to Ellen, the woman I loved, and Jacob's mother." The church seemed to hold its breath. Daniel's jaw dropped, and Henry, for the first time in his life, didn't dare look up. I stared at William, tears welling. He wasn't just defending me, he was claiming me before the entire town, something Henry had never done. Daniel's mockery, the years of contempt, all seemed to dissolve in that moment. William turned to me, his gaze softening. "You're doing well, Jacob," he said quietly but firmly. "Your mother would be proud." I nodded, unable to speak, knowing for the first time in my life that I was seen, that I was loved. The service continued in reverent silence. Daniel and Henry said nothing more, their heads bowed, their faces flushed with shame. As Mom's casket was carried to the cemetery, William walked beside me, and I knew that though Mom was gone, I was no longer alone. The funeral ended in a heavy silence, as if the entire town was still reeling from what had just happened. The image of William Carver, the powerful man from Eldridge City, standing up to defend me in front of everyone was etched into their minds. As for me, standing beside Mom's casket, I felt an unfamiliar sense of relief. Not because Mom was gone, but because for the first time in my life, I was no longer the lowly mechanic. I was Jacob, William Carver's son, and above all, the son of Mom, the woman who sacrificed her life to protect me. As people left the church, William took my hand, his eyes gentle but resolute. "You don't need to stay here anymore, Jacob," he said, his voice warm and steady. "Come to Eldridge with me, that's where you belong." I looked at him, then back at the old church where I'd endured countless scornful glances for 33 years. I nodded without hesitation. There was nothing left for me in this town except memories of Mom, and I knew she'd want me to move forward, to start a new chapter. I packed a few simple things from my small room, some clothes, a photo of Mom from her youth, and the yellowed envelope she'd given me. Henry was at the kitchen table as usual with a cigarette in hand. He didn't look at me or say a word. Daniel had left right after the funeral, as if the shame of being called out in front of the town was too much to bear. I didn't say goodbye. I had nothing left to say to them. I walked out of that wooden house for the last time and climbed into William's car. As the car pulled away, I watched the town shrink in the rearview mirror, feeling one part of my life close and another, greater part, open. Eldridge welcomed me with its grandeur and unfamiliarity. William brought me to his mansion, the place where Mom had worked, loved him, and where I was conceived in secret. The sprawling estate, with its long hallways and light-filled rooms, overwhelmed me. But William didn't let me feel out of place. He spent time with me, sharing stories of his life, the years he tried to find Mom, and the pain of learning he had a son he'd never known. "I lost Ellen," he said one evening as we sat by the fireplace. "But I won't lose you, Jacob. You're my family." The days in Eldridge were a world apart. William brought me into his company, a major construction conglomerate with skyscrapers and projects spanning the region. He didn't pressure me to become like him, but he taught me to stand tall, to recognize my own worth. I started working at the company not as a mechanic, but as an apprentice, guided by him step by step. I learned to read blueprints, manage projects, and most importantly, to believe in myself. For the first time, I felt like I wasn't just existing, I was truly living. But the past didn't let go easily. 6 months after the funeral, as I was settling into my new life, Henry and Daniel showed up. They came to Eldridge, to William's mansion, with expressions I'd never seen on them before. Submissive, almost pleading. I was in the living room reviewing a blueprint William had assigned me when the butler announced visitors. When I stepped outside and saw Henry and Daniel at the gate, my heart tightened, not from anger, but from the realization that they no longer mattered to me. "Jacob," Henry began, his voice unusually soft, a far cry from his usual coldness. "We heard you're doing well. We just wanted to check on you." Daniel stood beside him, avoiding my gaze, but I could see him clenching his fists, as if suppressing his discomfort. I knew they weren't here out of concern. The town had been buzzing about me being William Carver's son, and they'd surely heard about his wealth. "You're living with Mr. Carver, right?" Daniel said, forcing a friendly tone. "We're family, Jacob. After all, we raised you, didn't we? If you've got something good going, it's only fair to share with family, right?" I looked at them, a wave of anger rising, but I held it back. I was no longer the Jacob who bowed his head to their taunts. "Family?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. "You never treated me like family. Henry, you called me the lowly mechanic for 33 years. Daniel, you mocked me in front of the entire town, even at Mom's funeral. You're here for William Carver's money, aren't you?" Henry paled and Daniel stammered, trying to defend himself. "No, Jacob, you've got it wrong. We just wanted—" But I cut him off. I'd waited too long to say these words. "Mom left a will," I said slowly. "Half the house you're living in was supposed to be mine. She wrote it clearly, but I didn't claim it because I want nothing to do with you anymore. I've been too lenient with what you did to me, to Mom. From now on, we have no connection." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but Henry tugged his arm, shaking his head. They turned and walked away, their figures slouched, and I knew I'd never see them again. As the mansion gate closed, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I no longer needed their approval because I'd found my own worth. Not in William's wealth, but in Mom's love and my own self-acceptance. My new life in Eldridge wasn't just a material change. William wasn't just a father, he was a mentor, a friend. He taught me to stand firm in a world I once thought I didn't belong to. I began working on major projects, meeting people I'd only dreamed of before. But what made me happiest were the evenings spent with William, listening to him talk about Mom, their love, and the dreams he wanted me to carry forward. I realized I wasn't just living for myself, but to fulfill the hopes Mom and William had once held. Looking back on my journey, I understand that life isn't about what others think of you. It's about how you see yourself. I was once Jacob, the despised mechanic, but now I'm Jacob Carver, a man who knows who he is and what he's worth. Mom gave me the truth. William gave me a chance, but I chose to stand up and step out of the shadows of my past. If I have a message for anyone feeling worthless, crushed by scornful words, it's this. Don't let others define you. Your truth lies in your heart, in those who love you and in the strength you carry within. I found that truth, and I hope you will too.